Hello, everyone, and welcome to a briefing episode, but not a particular breakdown of projects per se. This one, I'm just kind of going over some of the recent updates to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 and kind of where it is now in March of 2024 or 2025. Sorry, when I'm making this video. I've had this sim since early January of 2025, and this is kind of where we are currently versus the first video that I put out and some of the other topics that I've kind of touched on in some of my last few videos. So there's some interesting developments that I've come across that some are maybe controversial. Now, when I get to the rotary wing portion of this, is kind of one of the aspects that might irritate some people. So, and before I get into that too further, I'll kind of talk about the fixed wing aspect of the sim. Right now, it's extremely limited in terms of what we can do for air tanker operations. So, if you're familiar with the sim, then I'm not speaking anything different to you than you probably already understand it. Um, in terms of fixed wing, the only thing we have are scooping aircraft. And we do have the VLAT, the 747 VLAT, which, as people know, isn't a very flexible platform. And if you try and get it in career mode, it's super expensive. So most people, I don't think, even use it. I could get me wrong, but I mean, it's super expensive, not real flexible. Um, and yeah, so the only other two aircraft we have are the AT-802 Scooper and the CL-415. Again, scooping aircraft. We don't have any fixed wing retardant based aircraft at all in this sim except for, like I said, the 747. And I've gone over that before in some previous videos about that. And right now, it doesn't look like there's um, anything from the side of Microsoft or Sobo or anybody else otherwise that's going to change that. So not only do we have those extremely limited platforms, you've got a very small air tanker, and with the AT-802, kind of a medium. I wouldn't even say really medium. Maybe it is considered a medium air attack or air attack air tanker with the CL-415. And then you go from those two categories all the way up to the largest VLAT that was ever used in the U.S., the 747. So there's not a lot of, like I said, I've said before, there's not a lot of that intermediate size or even large air tankers. That's it. You get the scoopers and the VLAT. That's it. There's no, looks like there's any changes or any refinements to any of that stuff, and we're still looking at issues with both the AT-802 and the 415 in terms of their performance and abilities to scoop water and things like that. The emissions that they do have, things like scoop speeds, I've gone over this before, that still is inaccurate. They're way too slow. The performance is bad on the 415. It's not real good on the AT-802, although I think the 802's performance is better than how the 415's is in a number of areas. So, I mean, Service Pack 1 or Sim Update 1 just came out a few days ago, and largely it fixed a lot of sim issues, and in particular the rotary wing stuff, which I'll get to later with the rest of this. But big thing it did fix was the elevated platform bug. Anybody who's been flying rotary wing kind of knows that if you try to land or hover over a raised platform, like on a building, an oil platform, or anything like that, that it would sling the helicopter and bounce it all around, and sometimes even send it off into trees and other buildings, and it was bad. But Sim Update 1 did fix that, and from what I've been reading, it fixed over 1,000, yes, 1,000 bugs or more 1,000 was just the bottom number. There's more than that apparently, which again, not really surprising considering how many bugs that I personally encountered just in career mode. There's all sorts of other issues and other aircraft and things like that with how complex the sim is and everything else. So there is progress there finally. However, stuff like I was saying, at least in the aerial firefighting realm, is still pretty much untouched and kind of um, lackluster in my opinion, based on what I've been able to fly with this. And there, like I said, there doesn't seem to be any other options out there yet to kind of fix that. Um, that also leads me to talking about fixed wing stuff and even further development is that none of the aircraft uh, have been uh, unencrypted. So if nobody knows, unlike 2020, 2024, all of the stock aircraft are completely encrypted and protected by Microsoft and Asobo, which means we can't look at them, we can't modify them, we can't even add our own liveries or make our own liveries really, unless you had them previously made for these platforms in 2020. So that hampers a huge portion of the community to develop things for this sim because one, the SDK isn't complete, and two, you kind of don't know where to start because I've gone over this before. Again, you can't even look at the aircraft to see kind of where to start modding or creating things for the sim. Um, and the sim's been out since November of 2024, and none of that seems to have changed much. So, kind of segue into why I'm looking at the CH-47 here. Um, some of you know that in the trailers, we've all seen the sky crane, and with its hose extended and them leaning towards us having, firefighting missions for helicopters. Well, apparently, from what I've discovered and found out, there are no plans whatsoever, at least right now publicly, for them to even have firefighting for helicopters in this sim, despite them showing it to us possibly being a thing with that S64 video, or in that small snippet in the trailers. According to what I've been able to find out, like through posts with Blackbird and things like that, is that they did have an early build version that the tank and at least the hover snorkel was functional on it. But Microsoft and Asobo opted not to go that route and implement any of that into the sim. Nobody knows why. There's just speculation at this particular point, but I'll go into that in a second here. That the they basically took all of those features off of the Sky Crane and left it as it is, as you see it in the sim. With the fixed snorkels, none of that works. All of it's inoperative. You can't click to start any of the tanking systems, use the snorkels, none of it. It's a big paperweight, essentially. Pretty to look at, fly it around, looks cool. That's it. And apparently, from what is being laid out to us now, is that there's no plans at all for them to implement this even at a later date. Like I said, could be wrong, but the way that it looks right now, there's no mention of firefighting in helicopters at all in this sim. So, and I was like, that can't be right because why would they show it in the sim? And this is like a false advertising, a big, glaring false advertisement because the most purpose-built firefighting helicopter or aircraft, I would say, in this game is the Sky Crane, and they even have it trying to do that mission, and suddenly we're not getting it. I would say suddenly, but it now appears that we're not getting that mission set for helicopters at all. Now, I went to try and look into this more, and it was pointed out that even in the SDK, there is nothing in it at all for setting up anything for helicopters in this sim for firefighting at all. Now, I say that right now. Does that mean in the future? Don't know. But right now, currently, all of the identifying factors that would say that they're leaning towards doing it eventually no longer exists in the sim at all. So we've got firefighting liveries for the CH-47, like we've got Billings here. There's Columbia helicopters, you know, and we've got the S-64 Sky Crane. And granted, they do heavy lift in these same companies, but at the same time, most people see them. It's not in heavy lift; it's in the firefighting setups. So right now, like I said, there's no plans for them to implement helicopter firefighting at all in Flight Simulator 2024, which to me is extremely disappointing because, like I said, right now we don't have any confirmation of why this was taken out of the sim. Were there ever actually plans for it, and it was just kind of a grab for us to try and for people to buy this sim? Don't know. I don't know we'll ever get an answer to that. But it's irritating to me because I was excited to have helicopter firefighting too, alongside the fixed wing stuff. Now, as we found out, the fixed wing stuff is kind of pretty watered down. So I was hoping that maybe it would expand into at least getting some rotary wing stuff in there. But again, that doesn't look like it's going to happen. So will it be added later? Again, we don't know. There's no official word on if they're going to add it in the future or what's going to happen. So that's unfortunate. So unless I'm kind of laying out the groundwork as to hopefully what can possibly happen, is that eventually here, I don't know how long this is going to be, that they unencrypt all of these stock aircraft so that it allows modders like myself and other people to mod these aircraft to be able to do that on our own and not have to worry about the ability of the sim itself to support it. Modders can probably we can produce stuff that we can feasibly do it ourselves. So there are some mods out there currently that allow you to do firefighting in free flight and stuff like that. And Now the Blackbird CH-47 here doesn't have any of its mission capabilities outside of career mode. So as you see it here, that's all it can do. You can't practice sling loading, any of that stuff. Even any of the other helicopters, you can't do that. So really the only other option is to going to other aircraft that already have those options, like the Militech CH-47, I believe, has the ability to carry at least a Bambi bucket under it. So going to those other third-party add-ons is kind of our only options because it seems like Asobo and Microsoft um, basically either have no interest in doing this to these aircraft, or they thought about it, played with the idea, and either let it go or it's too complex for them to implement. Now, I say that because it seems like with a lot of this stuff, it seems like, especially firefighting, and I notice this with helicopter missions especially, is that helicopter missions are extremely dynamic and complex. And in order for Microsoft to create all these missions and things to do, they use an AI generated mission creation system, best I can put together. And this AI mission generation system that they have takes parameters that they pre-planned that the mission builder makes or uses to make missions. Now, the unfortunate thing is for helicopters that doesn't work because where these mission objectives spawn, a lot of times you either can't interact with them, the spawn points themselves are bugged into terrain and autogen, or like in search and rescue missions, you can't even get to the person you're supposed to rescue because you can't land anywhere near them to rescue them. So stuff like that. And then I look at how complex firefighting is in comparison to these other niches. It's probably one of the most complex things in this sim because of how dynamic the whole environment would be around it. They can't implement all of that on top of the, in particular, the individual equipment on these aircraft. Now, could some of that be left up to the individual developers? Probably, but at the same time, they have to be able to make this equipment that interacts with the sim itself and the mission itself. And if they can't create a mission for that equipment to work properly and them to test, there's kind of no point in them going any further than that. It makes sense, right? So that's kind of where I think what has happened is that they've said, "Oh yeah, firefighting is great," but as they've gotten into it further, they've realized how complex it is, and they kind of went, "Okay, we need to stop where they are in development." So they got it to kind of work with fixed wing stuff, but it's apparently, to me, it seems like it's far too complex for them to get to work, at least in an effective manner, for them to be able to repeat, the ability to do these missions, and like I said, make the equipment for these helicopters. So I think that's why we're getting only one very small part of aerial firefighting in the fixed wing asset, while we're only getting scooping aircraft, because you take an airplane, you go make it land on the water, it fills up its tanks, it flies to the fire, as opposed to a retardant based tanker. You've got to go to the fire, and depending on what type of tanker type it is, you go to the fire, you have to wait for an overhead personnel to direct you where to drop, and if you're in an intermediate sized tanker, you got to wait for a lead plane. Now, they don't have any of that implemented in this sim at all either. They're only relying on initial attack, which in a lot of cases, you don't need a lead airplane, an air attack. I mean, you can have an air attack, but you don't need a lead airplane for things like initial attack. Some extended attack missions you do, but not in every case. But if you're talking about, like I said, something larger than a CL-415, you need a lead plane. Now, I haven't gotten to the 747 missions to know if they have a lead plane that you follow in, but that's what I mean, is like super complex stuff like that. They don't, at least from what it seems like, they don't have any subject matter experts or SMEs to consult to create this type of mission environment to where everything works flawlessly in such a complex, miniature scenario. And like I said, then it kind of snowballs from there, because then it's like, well, we can't create the missions or the environment, and then it's like we can go through all this process of making tanks and other airplanes, but we can't use it effectively. So they kind of, I feel like, uh, they've gone as far as either they want to or they can. Now, this is irritating to me, because one of the biggest reasons why this sim was so interesting to me and a lot of other people in the community was the ability for them to add firefighting and do firefighting missions. And the way that it sits currently, as I was saying in all these videos, is that we can't make anything for the sim to help expand it more. And what they've given us is so extremely limited, it doesn't really give us the ability to go any further than, say, using a bunch of add-ons from outside of the sim to purchase in order to sort of do some of these missions. So, and that kind of seems like that's where we're going to be stuck for the longest time, at least until, like I said, the only way forward, I feel, is someone's either got to crack a code to either expand this, or they've got to unencrypt these aircraft so that we, the modders, and the other people in the community, can create mission types, adjust flight parameters, fix these underperforming aircraft, or add external equipment that so we can do, and it looks like a firefighting aircraft, looks and does the things that a firefighting aircraft can do. Now, since I'm sitting in front of the CH-47, the modeling and everything, and I think I've gone over this before, is super realistic, and everything in this sim looks great. And like I said in these other videos, there's so much potential. And for the CH-47s, like for an example, there's very little that I would think needs to be done to these to make the firefighting versions. I mean, granted, you need to model a tank and implement it. For like Billings here, you'd have to have the snorkel come out this side window here, and then the tank on the bottom, or the fuselage. And the other thing that irritates me about this in particular is that most of the civilian CH-47s don't have this window configuration. We have a bubble bubble windows on either side to add to the ability to have better visibility when you look outside. That's one thing I noticed in this that they don't have, especially when you're trying to do heavy hoist missions and stuff like that. You can't see out of the helicopter very good unless you use the external view, which you kind of lose immersion by doing that. So, uh, so some of this stuff, like I said, there are small improvements that they could do for the models on top of adding the firefighting equipment if they ever got to get that far. But um, that's kind of one of my big gripes about it right now is that, like I said, through all this investigative stuff in the community and what I've been able to come across recently, we're kind of stuck, and we're stuck for till the immediate until something changes. So that's unfortunate. There are some guys, at least on the agricultural side, I've noticed that they've been implementing some really cool things for the agriculture side of stuff. So, but for firefighting, we basically are stuck. So, um, I don't know where that's going to leave us here in the next couple of months. We could be the same way for the next 3 months, 6 months, who knows, or until Sim Update 2 comes out. And if something else major with the Sim changes with that, I don't really know. But that's kind of what hopefully, what a lot of us are hopefully looking for. And that and the, like I said, the unencryption of the aircraft. So with that, if people are looking for firefighting missions that are more dynamic and you get retardant-based air tankers and stuff like that, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but they are just not in here, and there are no plans currently from Microsoft or the third-party community as a whole right now to bring any of that to the sim because everything is still locked down and nobody can really make anything to expand it further or make these missions more dynamic or to fix the issues in the firefighting missions themselves, the aircraft themselves, or any of that. There's a lot of fine tuning that needs to be done and an overall expansion of the niche as a whole. So I'm trying to stay positive, but right now it's hard to do so because when you come across things like what I found out about the rotary ring stuff today, actually, is that now it seems like all the stuff that we were shown and maybe there was some empty promises kind of uh, that won't be filled, at least in the immediate future, even though it seemed like we were going to be getting them. Doesn't seem like it's going to materialize. So that's disappointing in multiple senses for me, at least, and I'm sure a lot of other people probably hearing this are the same way. Um, there are some, like I said, it's not all doom and gloom. There are like I said, there's been improvement to the sim, but largely for what I'm focusing on for firefighting, for talking about in the community right now, that's kind of where we sit with this. Um, so hopefully in the future it changes, but like I said, that's kind of where we are right now. You can kind of hear it in my voice, maybe, that I am disappointed and I am irritated at the same time about it. But like I said, I'm still trying to keep an open mind about it, and hopefully that change the decisions or there is some type of official word that comes out that kind of outlines why they're not doing it for helicopters and why they've kind of only stuck to this one particular area of firefighting. Um, I want to say, from my personal opinion, based on all the facts that I've been able to come across, it just seems like it was really too complex for them to implement it fully. And that's where we're kind of stuck. So they kind of went as far as they could. Now, whether, like I said, I kind of go over it again, whether they're going to expand it further when they can spend the time on it, we don't know. And the devs are pretty quiet about any of that stuff. So um, that's kind of where we are. And, we can hope and maybe, like I said, with the unencryption of aircraft coming, hopefully maybe we can get some mods out there that at least you can partner up with some of these other third-party add-ons to be able to do firefighting missions, and not necessarily have to rely completely on Microsoft and Asobo's built-in system. Which again, I'll also add that they still haven't moved any of those missions out of um, career mode, and it doesn't sound like they are planning on doing that anytime soon or at all. So again, another speed bump in the overall scheme of things. But it seems like in order for us to do firefighting missions, it's going to be something that's going to come probably third party at some point, because it doesn't seem like either they're motivated to do that themselves or it's they've deemed it too complex. Like I said, it's just a theory right now, but everything seems to be kind of pointing to that. On top of their AI generated mission creation system being so buggy that they're going to need to spend some serious time trying to fix that too. Um, but yeah, so that's just been a quick, I shouldn't say quick, but it's been an update on kind of where the firefighting aspect of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 kind of sits as of this time. So thanks for watching.